Are you ready, Piedmont Triad? He's tanned, he's rested, and he's ready. He's been your conservative champion in local government. Get ready. The Steve Arnold Show is live from the heart of the Triad right now.
This is Steve Arnold, your indefatigable host this Saturday morning on Rush Radio 94.5. I have promised, of course, to talk about what is vital. We try to talk about state and local issues. We also talk about national issues, but state and local issues are so critical to your life. And since I've determined to be your paladin for truth, justice, and the pro-American conservative way, I have made a habit of looking on the website of the Civitas Institute. And I'm glad to say that the Civitas Institute is now a sponsor of this radio program. Very thankful for that, because they do such marvelous work in the legislature and around the state, talking about conservative principles, getting back to constitutional conservatism in our state, local, and national government. And, of course, the Civitas Institute focuses on state government primarily, although they do have services for instance, school boards and local officials. But I'm honored to have on the air with me this morning Matt Willoughby, who is a longtime North Carolina radio personality and who keeps up with the legislature like few others. Matt, are you on the line with me?
I am, Steve.
Thank you so much for being here this morning.
My pleasure.
I wanted to talk to you about the state legislature. You know, this year, more than most years, has been very interesting because of the political dynamics in Raleigh. The state legislature has gone to Republican control for both houses of the legislature for the first time in over 100 years, and there's very interesting dynamics there. Can you tell us what right now is happening in the legislature that is important and vital for people to know about?
Well, the first thing, of course, is the fact that the Republicans are now in charge of both chambers, and then the problem with that for them is they don't have a Republican governor in the governor's mansion. They
Right.
have a Democrat, Beverly Perdue. So they've already run into problems with that, with her vetoing several of the bills that the Republicans got through the legislature. That's the big dynamic change right now. And as for someone like me who's been down there for, covered the place for 20 years, this is the first time I've seen the Democrats in the role of the minority. And just like the Democrats don't know how to handle that role, the Republicans are having a little bit of trouble handling the role of the majority. Now, they are going things to watch for. What the Republicans have vowed is to pass a balanced budget, to cut the spending, and to cut taxes. Now, the House has already passed its budget. The Republicans in the House have already written their budget. It does cut spending from the governor's budget. It does reorganize some parts of state government. That's another thing they need to watch for, is as this budget moves through the legislature, they're going to be consolidating justice, the public safety department. They're going to be cutting off some trust funds to divert money to the general fund. They're working on a tax cut package that we may see next week. Need to keep your ears to the ground next week, because I'm told by the Senate President Pro Tem Phil Berger that there may be a joint finance committee meeting next week on the tax cut package. Now, in the House budget, there is a provision, a reserve for that finance. They set aside a loss of $230 million in the first year and $400 million in the second year of revenue. That would be the tax cut. Those are the targets, but we don't know how they're going to get to there. We know one of them is going to be a cut in the corporate tax rate. Those are going to be the big things that are going to really take up a lot of time, but they still think they can get a budget passed and to the governor by June 1st.
What about the sales tax? What are the Republicans going to do regarding the expiration of those sales taxes that they had pledged to do?
Oh, they would let the sales taxes, the extensions expire. So they would not. They don't want any taxes, any tax hikes extended. They want no new taxes, and they want tax cuts. They want it across a broad spectrum, so that you'll see not just one but several ideas of how to cut taxes.
So the House has adopted their budget plan.
Right.
The Senate needs to adopt a plan. When will they do that?
Well, now they start meeting next week on it. They've already had some meetings this week on it, the Senate side. And they want to, and they're vowing to have a budget ready for the governor by June 1st. So we should, starting next week, start to see some meetings on the budget, because something they've done that hasn't been done before, too, is they have held joint budget meetings with the House and the Senate at the subcommittee levels. So everybody has had to look at all the options for the budget before it even got to the Senate. So they're one step ahead when the budget gets to the Senate, because they'll already know what the options are, and they will have already talked to the House about any changes they want to make. And so there will be some changes. For example, I know Berger said that they wanted to spend a little bit more money on the universities and less on the K-12 than the House did.
So when the conference committee gets appointed, that whole process will be much easier, because, as you say, they want to give the governor a budget June the 1st. That's moving along fast.
That's the quickest I've seen it. So
tell me, when they started out, they originally had, from my understanding, a hole of like $3.5 billion. The number got reduced down to maybe $2.5 billion. How much of that hole is going to be fixed by the Republican budget?
Well, the Republican budget does fix it. The spending is at $19.1 billion, and the budget is balanced, and they have done it mainly by deep cuts. I mean, they've cut Smart Start and More at 4. They've cut all the departments, all the agencies. There are going to be layoffs of state workers and maybe even some state teachers and teacher assistants. So that's how they're doing it: deep cuts, and with
tax cuts
at the same time.
Absolutely, tax cuts, spending cuts, a balanced budget. It's quite remarkable, really. That's what they pledged to do. Now, it's going to hurt, and the question is, what is the governor going to do with it? Because she's already said she doesn't like what she sees in the House budget, and so if the Senate goes along pretty much the same way, chances are this governor may use her red ink to veto something else again. Yes, she has vetoed at least five bills that I'm aware of. Yeah, and of course, in the first 2 years of her administration, I'm not sure she vetoed anything. No. Easily was the last one to veto something. Right. Well, Matt, one of the things I really like about the Civitas Institute's website, and I think you've got a tremendous website up, is that every week you put up what is known as the bad bill of the week. And this week you've got House Bill 758, which has to do, I think, with an arts commission. Can you explain that just briefly? Our budget analyst, Brian Balfour, does that. Okay. Well, there's a bill apparently has been introduced to create an arts education commission. And it has the funding for the requisite staff and so forth. So it's designated as your bad bill of the week. And I just am very thankful for the work that the Civitas Institute does, informing the public about what's going on in Raleigh and trying to educate elected officials on how they can be more, how they can make conservative principles come to bear on their public policy making. So people need to watch our blog, because we keep close touch with the legislature and other issues on our blog. That's our really day-to-day information that we're pumping out. Thank you so much. Matt Willoughby from the Civitas Institute, I really appreciate you being on the Steve Arnold Show. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Steve. One of the things I promised last week was to continue a little more with the discussion of Ayn Rand, and Ayn Rand was such an interesting figure. She immigrated from Russia at a time when, in the 1920s, Stalin was firmly in control, and she hated statism. And she wrote a couple of books, one of which has recently been turned into a movie, Atlas Shrugged. The movie was terrible. I have found it interesting to see what people say about her works, because she is very much against big government. She's against statism. She supports, for instance, the state of Israel. She supports a strong America, and she said when she first saw the Manhattan skyline, it made her cry. And I wanted to continue that story just briefly with you. And also, on the other side of the break, I have a longtime friend whose name is Trudy Wade. She's on the Greensboro City Council. She used to be on the Guilford County Commission. And I want to ask her a few questions about what's going on in Greensboro. So we've got lots of good stuff in just a moment. Please come back for the Steve Arnold Show in just a few minutes.